Ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of seats in the front here, and all the dignitaries, or most of the dignitaries, have left, so you can use the seats up the front. We have an exciting morning left, so please use these seats up the front. I see a lot of people standing out there. Come right up, please. All right. Well, this next panel is also extremely exciting. As you heard earlier today, we heard from the fastest growing fintech in the world. We also heard from 3 of the biggest entrepreneurs in this country. Now we're going to hear why the next best thing, as they call it, is something that's probably going to come out of Europe as well. You see, not everything big comes out of Silicon Valley. And what a better panel than the following people I'm going to introduce. Alex Bonte has been around in the startup world probably more than almost any other person I've met. He is currently CEO of eRepublic Labs and one of the venture partners of Atomico. And he's put together 3 panelists that he's going to moderate that are really going to give you an impression that, you know, it's true. The next big thing is going to come out of Europe. We've got Nick Zenstrom, CEO of Atomico. We've got Íñigo Juantegui, CEO of OnTruck. And we have Juan Urdiales, CEO of Job and Talent. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Alexis, Nick, Íñigo, and Juan.
Okay, wow, thank you. That was very
Nice.
cool. I like it. I like the intro. Perfect. Hi, everyone. I hope you're all okay. I think you'll agree with me that we have a pretty interesting bunch of people right now on stage. Nicholas, thank you so much for coming. I think last time you were here was about 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yes.
So it's great to have you. Juan, great to have you as well. Íñigo, incredible. Two amazing Spanish entrepreneurs. But let's just go right to it because we have half an hour, so let's use all the time that we have. Nicholas, there was a recent piece on TechCrunch that I thought was interesting, where the journalist asked you, okay, we understand the reasons that why you started Atomico like 10 years ago, and I think just recall that, but why is Atomico still relevant today? Why are you still doing this?
Yeah. Because you continue to do what you do. So the theme, on our session here is the next big thing can come from anywhere. And that was really the original kind of vision, that great companies would come from everywhere. That's where we started. We really believe that there's no reason why great companies cannot come from anywhere, because entrepreneurs are just like athletes and artists and talented people, and they're just distributed evenly across the planet, but you need to support them and help them to scale. And what's really remarkable today is that Europe is really at liftoff. It's remarkable how many successful companies have been created in Europe, how many smart people are getting into technology and so forth. So, you know, a few years ago, we started to think about more of, okay, so of course, why do we have entrepreneurship? Why do we have innovation? Okay, it's to improve stuff, but is it to what end, to what objective? So it's really about kind of how can entrepreneurs build technology companies that has a positive impact, that can, you know, improve the state of the planet and society. That's something that we're extremely excited about, and also it's been validated because we see so many founders today that that's part of their mission, is to build companies that can actually solve some big problems. And as you all know, that the most successful companies are having founders who have a very strong mission to change something, to have an impact. But today we see more and more of those companies also thinking about articulating those impacts, not necessarily as, like what Google said, organizing the world's information, or what Bill Gates put a computer on every desktop. Now it might be to fix the food chain, or to reduce carbon emission by making road freight much more efficient, or other things. So those are really part of the mission now, is to support. You know, we continue to want to be extremely supportive of entrepreneurs in Europe, want to build really big companies, and also more and more also companies which actually can improve the state of the world. And the reason why that is also great business is that that means that they can hire the best people. The best people want to work for people, for companies with big missions.
Mm-hmm. So basically, the ambition is risen really from, you know, the next big thing can come from Europe and really funding European entrepreneurs from your experience with Skype, and to basically, you know, funding even more ambitious entrepreneurs that actually can make an impact, a positive impact on the world.
Bigger impact.
And that's where you think you can give some extra guidance. Okay, great. Guys, back to you. How is it to scale from Spain right now? I mean, why did you start in Spain and now go to Silicon Valley? I mean, the next big thing is supposed to be done in the Silicon Valley. Why are you trying to do it from Spain? And what were the challenges? What were the opportunities?
Well, the reality is that we have always believed that we can create a global company from here in Spain. And also the reality was that when we started, it was very tough. It was very tough because no one was believing that, actually. It's like, and there was no funds in Spain, actually, at that time, or very few funds.
How tough was it? How many funds did you go and see?
In Spain, 2. There was no more.
All
I
of
went
them.
to Caviedes, he said no, and then I went to Nauta, we were closer, but they say no too. And then we were nothing. It's like, so finally.
And then you were desperate.
We were raising money from angels, actually, that they were believing on us, and then Kivo and Felix Ruiz were our first 2, well, I would say, institutional investors that believed on us at that time. And since then, I think that was back in 2013, and the ecosystem has changed a lot. It's like, right now we have a lot of funds, Spanish funds, that are actually helping companies in the first stage. And then what we saw is that once you reach certain level, we managed to get the attention of global funds. And at that point, we had a global ambition, you know. But we have had that global ambition since we began. Maybe we were quite naive in the beginning, but it was a reality. And then we found, back in 2016, you know, we managed to actually convince Atomico to get into the company. And actually, the reason why we pushed very hard, we actually visited a lot of, and went to a lot of funds, and we shared the same vision as Atomico shared, of actually building something new and global. Actually, we're not a copycat. We're generating something very new. It's like we're a unique concept with a global ambition, and that suits very well the fund that we have brought. And right now, the entrepreneurs have that possibility that didn't happen before. They can actually start the company here, raise funds locally, and then raise from global funds to actually pursue a global ambition and to receive help from those funds. Because right now, those funds are, in our case, we're receiving help from people that was in Uber, Facebook, Skype, and that have got the experience to actually run an international and global disruptive model. So I think that right now the ecosystem is in a much better shape to create those global dominators.
No, absolutely. Inigo, what do you think?
Well, I absolutely agree. So I think when I started my first startup, La Novela Roja, it was more or less the same time you started your Pantalan, and it's true that it was super tough, and many things have changed in these years. First of all, there's more money, but also there's more knowledge. So we have second-time and third-time entrepreneurs. We have second-time and third-time funds that have done really well, and all this knowledge is helping the ecosystem to bloom right now. But also the thing that I do think that changed the most is that big funds like Atomico came to Spain and started to think that from Spain we can build the next unicorn. And what that changed, at least from my perspective, is that it changed the long-term vision that we used to have. So when we started the first company, we're thinking about Spain, and all the funds that we had or investors that we had were like pushing us to focus on Spain in the next 5 years. And whenever you go and talk to Niklas in this case, he's talking about what's going to be the world look like in 20 years. And that's the kind of vision that you need by your side in order to build the future, because it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to really build the future.
Okay. And how do you guys think about what Niklas mentioned towards the end about mission-driven entrepreneurs having a positive impact on the world when you're building your company? I mean, okay, the ecosystem in Spain has improved. Yes, there's a bit more local investors. Yes, some of the international investors are coming, but is it really realistic if you're a Spanish entrepreneur here to say, oh, the company I'm going to start is going to be about changing? I mean, am I being too cynical, or is it possible?
Well, I think it's absolutely possible, and I think it's the way the new entrepreneurs are thinking of. I think we are all aware of the carbon dioxide or the plastics or the traffic jams or the many issues that we're facing that are affecting, that are going to affect us in the long term. So, for example, in our case, we measure the CO2 emissions, so we make sure that we improve them, and that also we improve the traffic congestion in cities. Those are two key drivers, and the motto of OnTrack. And also, from a selfish perspective, it is true that it's helping us acquire or get people from very good startups and from abroad, thanks to having this being mission-driven, you know, and trying to go above just the financial gain.
Yeah. Juan?
Yes, my view here is that there are some examples, but the general view is that we don't really have yet mission-driven entrepreneurs, and because in the end is the ecosystem doesn't really allow it, you know. It's like and I'm going to explain this. It's like, well, it's like it's very tough, you know, to believe that someone can actually change the world when you don't have seen any company yet in Spain or very few in Europe changing the world. So sometimes if you go in Spain through the ecosystem, especially in your early stage with talking about how you want to change the world, being a mission-driven entrepreneur, sometimes people may think, okay, you know, I haven't ever seen an unicorn, so I don't believe in unicorns, and this is a story tale that I don't believe in that.
They are real.
So it's, yeah, they could be real, but I think that we need some really massive hits and great examples. And I'm sure, maybe Nicholas, you can talk a bit about how Sweden has evolved, because I think it's an amazing example of small country generating companies like Skype, Spotify, and iSettle. That I think that it has changed the mentality of not only the entrepreneurs, but also the whole mentality of the ecosystem. You know, that in order to have mission-driven entrepreneurs, we need the ecosystem to believe in that.
Okay. So if in Spain now we have an ecosystem where you can have mission-driven entrepreneurs, mission-driven companies, and if Nicholas, you're saying, you know, that's how you build something huge. Yeah. That's how you really have a massive impact, how you build the next big thing. So for the people here in the audience, entrepreneurs, give us a few hints. Yeah. You know, what do you think are the big problems and that need a solution that could make a massive mission-driven company?
I think first of all, you need to combine mission with vision and ambition. Those things, you know, you need those three things, because if you just have we have a mission that is to make people happy or whatever, that's probably not going to get anywhere. But if you have if you have a vision what you want to be in whether it's 10 or 20 years, but not 3 years, because you need to have a 3-year or maybe a 2-year kind of plan what you're going to do with your kind of OKRs and your KPIs. But you also and of course on a daily basis everyone gets really focused, because that's what you need to do every day. It's like, how can we improve our KPIs? But sometimes you need to step back and, as in the founding moment of a company, it's like, where do we want to achieve, and articulate that. And so, you know, the great thing is that there are so many opportunities and there's so many challenges, and every problem and every challenge is a great opportunity. And technology is building on top of other technology stacks, and of course that means by definition every year we have more technology that we can build upon. So there's never been a better time to have even bigger ambition than before. And the other thing what's happened now, because it's really been a transition from, if you talked about bigger ambitions, then investors didn't want to touch you. And I had that experience with Skype, by the way. We say, well, we're just going to go out, we want to disrupt the global telecommunications industry, and we kind of went to see every VC and every investor in Europe, and we got rejected by everyone because they wanted to see us doing something.
I think that rejection is a common theme here.
Yeah, we all reject. That's what builds.
99% rejection.
Yes. that's what builds your kind of. So it's not like, oh, we need to go after one or other, but if you put your mind to it, and it's like if you see something that is, it's like a problem, and you sort of think about it not only from a smaller point of view, but also a bigger point of view. But I can tell you that, some of the biggest kind of industries are still completely has not gone through a transformation, and of course, healthcare, education are still kind of barely touched by technology. So those are kind of things, and you know, things like transportation is just starting with the ride-hailing companies. But that's going to be, if you think about how is that going to look like in 20 years, because you know, in 3 years it's going to be a little bit more, but if you look at like an end state in 20 years, you know, when we've gone through a transition, you know, you're not going to have any cars in any city. There's going to be autonomous vehicles. There's going to be electrical transport, e-scooters, which means that the city is going to be great, and it's going to be healthy to live in the cities. It's going to be green, and you know,
Flying
and that
taxis, with Lilium flying
yeah,
taxis.
and you have
that's my favorite.
flying electrical taxis, and of course there will be, and then all of a sudden this city is going to be very, very nice, but you can also live in the countryside. So those have pretty big impacts, and that's going to have also big impact in terms of real estate and development and infrastructure, as an example.
So basically everything's going to be changing, so new opportunities are going to emerge. There's existing opportunities, but also new opportunities are going to emerge.
Yeah.
And so what were the kind of the drivers behind your decision to invest in job and talent and then in on-truck? What do you think are these big world challenges that these companies are addressing?
Well, Juan, he wanted to become the biggest employer in the world. So that's kind of but it's about looking at some macro trends and what's happening and enabling technology and then projecting what can happen. So what's exciting with job and talent it's not a classifieds to get a job. It's about looking at what we got excited about. It's about looking at the change how people want to work, where it was, you know, in the old days it was about job security. You work for one company for like your whole life. Today people want to have much more flexible work conditions. So, but if you're a company, you may want to have more of a steady flow of employees or workforce. So then by building a platform that can provide for the job seeker a platform where they can get their job security and flexibility to move between different jobs and outsource the whole payroll and potentially even more going forward, and for the companies to provide work for service. That's a pretty big vision, right? And then then you look at that like, okay, that's pretty good in terms of what are the positive outcomes of that? Well, that means that today, if you're like in the gig economy or as a freelancer, you're pretty vulnerable in terms of when you're out of jobs. But if you're part of a platform that job and talent can potentially be long term, you can then have a bit more of a kind of.
Okay. And I think Jonathan, you're already providing work per month to like 15,000 people. I think that was the number.
Today we have over 15,000 people.
So you're on the way to, so for a startup that provides work to 15,000 people, you're just starting.
Yes,
that's interesting.
we just need to do 1,000x.
Perfect. I'll ask you a follow-up question afterward on that one. Nicholas, and what about on-truck?
Yes. So road freight in Europe alone is a massive industry. It's multiple billion, and it's extremely inefficient today, where if a company want to have something shipped, it's basically like making a phone call or literally kind of sending a fax and someone responds to it. It's completely not automated, it's not optimized. So it seems to be and the other thing is that 40 to 50% of all these trucks are empty. So it's pretty obvious that can be optimized for everyone involved with marketplace and some algorithms. And by doing that, it can not only become a really, really big company, but it can also, as Nigel said, you can reduce traffic on the roads and reduce carbon emissions. So that's kind of a no-brainer. So then after this, it's like, okay, so there's really big missions and visions and ambitions with these two companies. Then, okay, that's all great. We can sit in the sofa and talk about it. But the next thing, which is kind of every day, the grit is kind of execution, which is harder. It's much harder than to execute and do things in the right order and allow things to take time. instead of like we need to expand in a lot of different markets right away, but like no, build a really solid model, and by the way, build a solid team first of everything. If you don't have the team, you cannot, there's no way you can fulfill the vision. But if you're clear with the vision, ambition, and mission, then you can attract really good people.
So mission, vision, execution, and a team that is able to execute and has a lot of grit, because you're going to be rejected all the time, as we've just heard over and over and over, which is interesting.
But also, by the way, the other thing is also not being afraid of failure here, because the bigger ambition you have, and the more you articulate that, the more likelihood is that you're going to not get there, and that you need to be comfortable with.
Perfect. Back to you, Inigo. So tech is getting a bit of flack right now. They're getting a bit of bad press, you know. So some big tech players are getting a bit of bad press. So if you really think about your long-term vision about OnTrack, like if you look at your 10-year vision or 9-year vision, about what are the good and bad impacts that something like OnTrack could have? Because I'm sure there's a lot of good things, but maybe you might have some negative impacts. Imagine autonomous trucks won't need drivers anymore, or do you think about that?
I do think about that, and it's true that when you see the path in the coming 5 years, you see all the good that you can do by reducing emissions, by optimizing the tracks that you have. And then when you think about autonomous tracks, I have to say that it's going to have a huge impact on the labor that is right now working on tracks. That's for sure. And it's only in Spain. We're talking about 300,000 people. So the impact might be huge. But also on the other hand, I really want to think on the good things. If the autonomous track comes, the costs are going to be reduced, and also if we are able to optimize the routes, the costs are going to be reduced even more. So then moving things is going to be cheaper, so the whole market is going to be bigger. It's going to be easier for everyone to move things, so other markets will be able to increase the amount of movements that they do, the amount of exports and imports. So it's true that on one hand we see that it might be in the far future, it might be an impact on the tracking, on the trackers, but also on the other hand, I do think that we can increase or allow other industries to expand and improve.
Okay. What about you, Juan? I mean, of course, you're creating jobs and you're creating a flexible workforce, all sorts of stuff. I mean, on one hand, that's great. On the other hand, that's pretty scary for people. So what's kind of your 10-year vision, and what do you think is the good impact you can have, but also the potential downfalls, and how are you thinking about that?
Yes, regarding the goods, I think that once we manage to actually grow massively, have liquidity, have 100 million people working with us, it's like there's a way of reducing massively the unemployment rate. It's like because people will be much more utilized and employed. And at the same way, we're starting actually right now to give some kind of benefits, perks, and in the long term, who cannot say that we will be like a kind of parallel social security for all of our workers, like giving them extra health insurance, more stability, even on different shifts or different assignments, but giving that kind of permanent stability, not in the same company, but making sure that the platform takes care of them and they're placed in different places. So that's a very positive thing for the labor market. Also, it's like we need to actually build a culture of, inside the company, where we're, we need to be conscious about what we're building. It's like, just let's be brutal. Imagine a collapse of the company when we have 100 million workers. It's like if Facebook collapse, then you cannot communicate with your friends. You cannot see a bunch of articles and pictures, which is it's going to be hard, like that. We can live without that. But how about if we collapse 100 million families? It's like, then we need to put that culture since now in the company. Being very, very careful with and it's like we have had tough times in the company, and we have laid off people. It was really hard on our side, but that was all related with being more efficient as a company, because we have a responsibility not only across our internal employees, but our what we call staffed employees. That is huge and massive, and anyone that works in the company needs to be cautious about that. And thinking about that.
Thank you. Absolutely. We've got about 2 minutes left. So Nicholas, I want to actually shoot 2 questions. First question, then the conclusion. First question is a bit out of left field. You were on stage with Barack Obama last week. I think you did a fireside chat with him, and from what I recall, you talked about several things, from basketball to many other things. What was like the main takeaway from that conversation that you could share?
We started at basketball and went to the world was collapsing. I think, first of all, extraordinary opportunity to have a conversation with him. Is such a fantastic leader. I think he's someone who's going to potentially do more in his post-presidency period than he did as a president. I think he's onto what is that it's about educating and empowering the next generation of leaders. And that's something I shared as well, where the world is going through a very challenging transition. We have climate change, we have shortage of water, we have a rise of populism, and we have kind of technology which is becoming a threat to a lot of people, and we talk about automation. So there's a lot of challenges we have in front of us. And so the thing that, and then at the same time, a lot of things get more and more short-term focused. If you're, tech companies are looking at feedback loops and algorithms to tweak things, and politicians are looking at their, not even looking at the next period, mandate period, looking at whatever they're saying in the media and how that's being responded. So that is one of the big challenges. So the takeaway, I think, is about focusing on next generation of leaders, and I can see that also with founders and the conversations we had here, is that when you see a big tech company where the kind of the culture going a little bit the wrong way, young entrepreneurs are responding to that by thinking about these things we talked about, building culture. And I think the same thing for the future of political leaders.
Okay, perfect. And just as a final conclusion, because that's all the time we have, if we were to take away 3 things today here at the audience, what would be those 3 things for you, Nicholas? And then we finish on that.
I think we nailed it when we talked about it. It's about this mission to go out and really solve something that is worth solving, and then doing that with a big ambition. And the backside of that ambition, don't be afraid of failure, and do it together with really great people, because it's only if you have that big vision, ambition, and mission that is very articulated to solve something real, then you can get the right people behind you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nicholas. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you.
Thanks.
I did.